Millions of Americans watch Bret Baier, the Fox News anchor, report the day's most important news every night. But few people know that this experienced reporter has been through terrible things in his personal life for almost 20 years. A son was born with a heart the size of a pea that was pumping blood in the wrong direction. He had 5 open heart surgeries before he turned 13. A family was stuck upside down in a frozen ditch after their car crashed in Montana. The sudden death of Bret's father, who shaped everything he did, especially his singing. It might be the most painful thing of all that his text messages were leaked, because they would ruin his image as one of the fairest reporters on TV. It's the story of a man who worked his whole life telling America hard truths, but in his own life he had to face facts that no journalism school could have taught him. There was no reason why 2007 should have been a bad year for Bret Baier. He had just been named the network's White House correspondent by Fox News, which is a very important job that covers the Bush government. His professional path was going straight up. It took Bret years of hard work, but he was finally reaching the top of his field. In a hospital delivery room, his inner world was about to fall apart. In that year, Amy Baier gave birth to their first son, whom they named Paul. The delivery itself went without a hitch. It looked like there were no problems or warning signs, just another healthy baby coming into the world. But not long after the birth, one of the nurses saw something that wasn't right. The baby looked pale, like his color wasn't quite right. What happened next was every parent's worst fear come true. Medical tests showed a terrible result. Paul was born with 5 heart problems that were not there at birth. His heart, which was about the size of a peanut, was beating in the wrong direction. The problems were so bad that doctors told parents bad news that they don't want to hear. In a few days, their new baby boy would need open heart surgery. Some people thought Paul might not make it to his parents' house alive in time. Bret and Amy were raised Catholic and have a lot of faith, but nothing can prepare you for seeing your baby son wheeled into the operating room. The couple relied on prayer a lot during those scary early days of music. Snorts Bret would later talk about what he was thinking at the time, and say that he thought a loving God had bigger plans for Paul and their family. In those early days, though, Snorts, faith and fear lived together. Paul had his first open heart surgery when he was just a baby. Even though the surgery went well, it was just the start of a medical journey that would shape the Baier family for years to come. Paul would have 4 more open heart surgeries over the next few years. In between the big surgeries, he had 10 angioplasties, which were medical procedures meant to keep his heart and lungs working. Each treatment had risks that could have killed the patient. Each time of healing had its own problems. The Baiers came up with ways to deal with being hospitalized all the time. They made a family motto that they would play over and over music when things were bad. "We're getting Paul home one day faster." It became a way for them to keep track of their growth. They could see the light at the end of the tunnel, even if it seemed very far away, or like the road ahead was going to be too long. 7 years into their journey with Paul's heart problem, in 2014, Bret chose to tell the world their story. He wrote an autobiography called Special Heart, which was subtitled, A Journey of Faith, Hope, Courage, and Love. The book wrote about every scary part of Paul's medical journey, showing readers what families of babies born with heart disease go through. Bret was honest in his writing about how Paul's illness affected his marriage to Amy, the fears that kept him up at night, and how their faith got them through the worst times. The book was useful in 2 ways. All the money raised went to study into congenital heart disease, which made other families dealing with the same diagnosis feel less alone. The Baiers learned that almost 1% of all babies in the U.S. are affected by congenital heart defects, but few people knew about this. Bret changed that with his position. During this time, Bret got important mental support from someone he didn't expect. Brit Hume, the famous Fox News host that Bret had replaced on Special Report, had his own family tragedy when his adult son killed himself. Most of his peers couldn't understand how Hume felt about grief and fear. During the early days of Paul's health problem, he talked to Bret and gave Bret advice that was very helpful. "It's gonna get better," he said. "You have to trust in God and the doctors, and put it in God's hands." The Baiers worked hard to keep things normal as Paul grew. When their second son Daniel was born in 2010, they made sure that both boys felt loved and cared for in the same way. With all the attention on his bigger brother's health, Daniel might have felt like he wasn't getting enough attention, but the 2 brothers became close. Even with everything going on, Paul was determined to live a normal life. But the family still had a lot of problems to deal with. In fact, the scariest part of their trip was still to come. The 2019 trip for the Baier family to Montana was supposed to be just what they needed. A chance to hit the slopes, take in the mountain air, and forget about heart monitoring and hospital visits for a while. Paul's health had been stable for the most part. They thought the family could finally take it easy. The trip to ski music itself was great. The boys had fun on the hills. Bret and Amy got some much-needed alone time. As the holiday came to an end, the family piled into their car and drove to the airport. As they drove home, they were thinking about the good times they had, and making plans for their next family trip. On that Montana road, no one could have known what would happen next. The car hit a patch of ice. Bret lost his balance. They crashed into a truck before anyone could fully understand what was going on. Their SUV went flying off the road when it hit something. The car flipped over and ended up in a ditch next to the road, upside down. Just quiet, and the sound of metal rustling for a moment. It dawned on them that all of them were still alive. A driver who was going by saw the accident and stopped right away to help. The helpful person worked with Bret and Amy to get all 4 family members out of the wrecked car. When emergency snorts workers got there, they rushed everyone to the closest hospital to get checked out. The irony of the situation wasn't lost on a family that was already very used to hospital rooms and medical exams. People would joke that they'd go to Montana to get away from health problems, but they'd end up back in the hospital. The damage estimate showed that the person had a lot of luck. Bret hit his head and hurt himself. There were 14 stitches in the chin of one family member. One had a slightly crooked tooth that would need to be fixed by a dentist. The last injury on the list was a sprained ankle. Thankfully, no one was seriously hurt or killed. In the end, Bret would say that they were hurt, but still living. Bret Snorts made a public statement thanking the first rescuers and the person who stopped to help. But it was his personal thoughts about the accident that he shared on social media that showed how much it hurt him. He sent out a tweet that seemed to sum up everything the Baier family had learned about music over the years of medical emergencies and close calls. "Don't suppose that music is enough. Every day is a blessing and family is everything," he wrote. "That's something you should always tell yourself of before something else does it for you." The accident was yet another lesson of how fragile life is, but the Baiers already knew this better than most. But they didn't have much time to deal with the stress. After a few months in 2020, Bret's phone would ring with bad news that was different from the first. Bret's dad had been told he had cancer. The illness got worse quickly. Bret got word that the end was near a few months after being diagnosed. He went on a trip to be with his father, and the whole family got together to say goodbye. Bret later said he was glad his dad didn't have to suffer for long and that everyone who loved him could say goodbye. Bret was more upset than he thought about the loss. In an interview with MarketWatch just 3 years ago, he talked about his bond with his father and how much his father had influenced his work ethic. Everything Bret did, from the landscaping business he ran as a kid to the way he did his job as a news anchor, was influenced by his father. He learned about honesty, hard work, and loyalty by seeing his father live by those ideals every day. When Bret told everyone online that his father had died, they responded with a flood of support. His social media was full of messages of support and love from viewers, coworkers, and other journalists. But all the help in the world couldn't fill the void left by Bret's loss of the man who had been so important to his growth. Bret was still dealing with Paul's ongoing health problems and grieving the death of his father. He had no idea that a scandal at work was about to blow up and threaten everything he had worked for. The fallout of the 2020 presidential election threw American politics and the media into chaos. Donald Trump wouldn't admit loss to Joe Biden, saying that there was widespread fraud in the election. A lot of Republicans agreed with these claims, and some GOP politicians even said the election was stolen because voting computers were hacked and music messed up the vote counts. The accusations were aimed at one company in particular, Dominion Voting Systems, which made computer voting equipment that is used all over the country. Over the weeks after the election, more and more crazy fraud claims were made against the company. Some conservative media figures said that Dominion's machines were set up to switch Trump's votes to Biden's. Even though there was no proof, the claims quickly spread through right-wing media, and Bret's boss Fox News became one of the biggest supporters of them. A lot of Fox News hosts regularly said things about Dominion's tools that were not true. Each and every night, hosts and anchors said that the company might have had something to do with Trump losing the race. Although most of the network's viewers supported Trump, they were excited by these stories. But Dominion wasn't going to let the charges go unchallenged. The Snorts company sued Fox News for libel and wants $1.6 billion in damages. Dominion said the network was trying to hurt its image by making false claims that executives at the network knew weren't true. Because of the lawsuit, there were a lot of discovery processes, and Bret was questioned and looked into as part of the case. Texts between Fox News personalities were asked to be shown in court. Communication within the company was closely examined. What came out was a disturbing look at how the network worked during the election. Bret thought that the real tragedy of what happened with Dominion was more than just the case. In the wake of Trump's loss, Fox News moved even further to the right, which made Bret feel more alone at work. He had built his job by reporting facts in a measured way. People from all party views respected him for being fair. He laughed as he thought about how his network had given up on those values in order to make its viewers happy. Bret made a choice that showed what was most important to him. He proposed a special show that would carefully look into and disprove the claims of election fraud that are being made in conservative media. The special would show that Fox News cares about what voters think while still putting facts ahead of feelings. It would be an honest moment for journalism, showing that the network could serve its viewers and the truth at the same time. Bret Snorts sent the plan and then waited for a reply. He's still not there. The show was never made. No one even replied to his pitch. Fox News fought to keep internal messages secret as the Dominion case went on. But some of those private texts got out to the press in the end. The Daily Beast got text messages between Bret and Tucker Carlson, who is one of the biggest stars on the network. Many people's views on Bret Baier would never be the same after reading those texts. The texts showed Bret and Tucker talking about how Fox News decides what election results to call. A lot of angry Trump fans were calling the network upset that Biden was winning states. The text showed that Bret knew the network's main viewers weren't happy with Biden's success and needed to feel better. Bret wrote that he was personally asking network executives to slow down their election calls, which was even worse. In one message, he said that he had told them to slow down and that he thought they would call Nevada for Biden slowly. The words came true as prophecies. Fox News was the last major network to officially call the election for Joe Biden. They didn't do it until many other news outlets had already done so. Before the texts were made public, Bret had mostly kept quiet about rumors about why he was running for office in 2020. He had been able to handle the worst criticism of Fox News because of his reputation as a fair-minded music writer, but the messages destroyed that carefully built image. There was proof in the form of documents that Bret had let politics affect his judgment of the news. The man who built his career on being fair seemed to have lowered his standards to make people happy who were angry. The charge that you've put politics ahead of facts is one of the worst things that can happen to a journalist. That's exactly what the leaked text said. In the end, Fox News paid Dominion $787.5 million to end the case. This was one of the biggest defamation settlements in the history of American media. The network said in a statement that some of the things they said about Dominion were not true, but a settlement check wouldn't fix the damage to Fox News's image or Bret's personal reputation. What Bret was ready to give up for political reasons would be a question that would follow him. But Snorts, even though things were falling apart at work, his personal life kept making him use all of his strength. The Baiers never lost sight of what really important. Even though the Dominion scandal and the leaked texts caused a lot of stress at work, Paul's fight with his heart condition went on, and his family's goal to help others going through the same thing kept them going. Even though Bret's career was in the middle of a scandal, the Sellers had become well known in the field of pediatric cardiology. While Paul was getting most of his care at Children's National Hospital in Washington, D.C., they became important figures in the hospital's foundation. Bret used his fame to bring attention to the hospital and earn money. Through different charity events and fundraising efforts, he helped raise more than $1 million for the hospital. Amy joined the foundation's board and took an active part in setting the goals for the group. In 2023, the couple made the biggest cash promise they had ever made. The Baier Family Congenital Heart Disease Research Program was set up with a $1 million gift to Children's National Hospital. The program's main goal is to improve treatments for the condition that affects almost 1% of all babies in the U.S. For the Baiers, it was a way to turn the pain of their family into a mission, making sure that other families might have better outcomes than they did. Still, Paul kept going against what people thought he would do. Even though he was having ongoing physical problems, he wouldn't let them tell him what he couldn't do. He played golf for his high school's varsity team and spent hours improving his swing on the course. He also played tennis for the varsity team, which may have been hard on his body because of his health problems. The Baiers worked hard to make sure that both Paul and his younger brother Daniel felt loved and supported. They were careful not to let Paul's health needs take away from Daniel's own journey through childhood. Then, in May 2024, something was found that made everyone remember how dangerous Paul's position still was. A normal chest X-ray, the kind Paul had had dozens of times before, showed something that made the whole medical team shiver. Doctors found a tumor near Paul's heart that could kill him. The 16-year-old had shown no signs at all. If the aneurysm hadn't been found, it could have burst at any time, killing him for sure. Bret Baier said that the finding was a sign from God, and it's hard to disagree with his view. It was almost impossible that a regular screening would find an aneurysm that wasn't causing any symptoms. To fix the artery, Paul had his 5th open heart surgery. The surgery, which was the most difficult and dangerous he had ever had, went well. Just a snort. Paul was sent home 5 days after his surgery to continue healing there. The Baiers were committed to being honest about their experiences the whole way. They knew that telling their story would help other families dealing with the same illness feel less alone. Bret used his job at Fox News to talk to doctors about fetal heart disease. This taught viewers about warning signs and how important it is to get screened early. He talked about other families who had been diagnosed with CHD and gave them a chance to share their own stories of survival and battle. The Baiers always told other families going through similar problems to have hope and a different point of view. Even if things look bad right now, they said there's always a reason to think things will get better. Have faith in the medical staff. If you have hope, lean on it. Stay close to your family. Enjoy each day as it comes, because tomorrow is neither guaranteed nor set in stone. Bret Baier is still the host of the evening special report on Fox News, which brings news to millions of people, but he's not at all the ambitious young reporter he was when he started working for the network in 1998. Years of health problems, emotional losses and problems at work have changed how he thinks about what's important. Paul, who is getting close to adulthood, will need heart care for the rest of his life. His doctors aren't sure what will happen in the future. There will most likely be more treatments, and maybe even more surgeries. 2024's aneurysm scare showed that danger still hides in ways that aren't always clear. But Paul has lived to be 16 years old, done well despite his illness, and built a life full of sports, friends, and regular teen things. That's more than the Baiers could have hoped for in those scary first days in the hospital. At this point, Bret often talks about how important it is to be thankful for everything you have every single day. Even though the failures at work were painful and embarrassing, they were nothing compared to the many times he almost lost his son over the years. His son was still alive, but the texts that got out hurt his image. Fox News was ruined by the Dominion story, but his family lived through a car accident that could have killed all of them. From your point of view, Bret learned that it changes how you deal with both happiness and sadness. The terrible accident in Montana that turned their car over was another harsh warning of how quickly things can change. You're thinking about your normal life as you drive to the airport. The next thing you know, you're lying in a ditch upside down, not sure if everyone is okay. When ice forms on a road is out of your control, you can't change the fact that some babies are born with heart problems. There's nothing you can do about text message leaks, or your dad being told he has cancer. You can choose how you react though. You can choose to be thankful instead of angry. You can choose to be happy instead of sad. Snorts for a man who spent decades writing about other people's tragedies and victories, reviewing political wins and losses, and following the rise and fall of famous people. Bret Baier has learned that the best story he can tell isn't one he tells from the news desk. That's the life he lives every day when the cameras stop rolling, and he goes home to a family that has been through more than most people can believe. It can be heard in Paul's heartbeat, which is still strong after 5 open heart surgeries. It's clear in the bond between two boys who have learned that medical problems don't have to define a childhood. The family feels it in every grateful breath, because they know how close they've come to losing everything more than once. The work problems will go away. The Dominion scandal will be forgotten in the history of TV news. As new scandals arise, the leaked texts will be forgotten. Paul's heart will keep beating though. Every morning the Baier family will choose gratitude over fear, a purpose over being stuck, and the belief that even the hardest paths can lead to something important. Music, if you don't give up hope.